Joan Collins.
So, Minister, I'm of the opinion that this is an election budget. No big giveaways, just a little here, a little there, something for everyone in the audience. One would think, listening to the Minister, that we don't have a housing crisis, that we don't have a housing emergency, that homelessness hasn't more than trebled in the last 4 years. One would think we don't have a crisis in our health services, with 700,000, that's 1 in 6 citizens on a waiting list. We also have 1 in 6 people, including the 100,000 at work, on incomes below the poverty line. This budget will make little or no difference to those struggling to live on an inadequate income, the 50% on an income of on or below 27,000 a year. It will make no difference to those who are struggling to get or keep a roof over their heads, which they can afford, or those who are ill themselves or have ill relatives. It will make no difference to the near 100% increase in the number of people reliant on food supports between 2016 and last year. Just 2 years ago, 54,000 people were supported through the Fund for European Aid to the most deprived, an EU food provision scheme augmented by national governments. Last year, that demand almost doubled to 96,000 people. Financial support for the food programmes went from 36,000 in 2015 to almost 3 million last year. This is with your progressive budgets. Over 6 million has been spent to the programme since July 2016. This data challenges your mantra of widespread economic recovery and the "we are all in this together, wear the green jersey" club. This budget represents more of the same: the maintenance of Ireland as an effective tax haven for multinationals and very high wealth individuals. There was nothing concrete whatsoever in the Minister's speech of corporation profit tax. The report by the Comptroller and Auditor General last year revealed that of the top 100 companies, 13 had paid an effective rate of less than 1%. The window dressing on this issue will have to stop. Social Justice Ireland has noted that even an effective rate of 6% would yield an extra 1% in corporation profit tax next year, while a reduction of the tax break on intellectual property from 100% to 80% would raise an additional 750 million next year, just tweaking that. The Minister made no mention of the fact that 140 of Ireland's 334 high-net individuals who have individually over 50 million in assets, declared income of only 125,000 a year, with 83 declaring a taxable income below the average wage of 36,500. That's absolutely scandalous that is allowed to happen when we have people on their streets and in hotels and hubs and B&Bs. At a minimum, we need action to close off loopholes and reliefs to bring the effective corporation profit tax rate close to the 12% nominal rate. At a minimum, we need abolition of Section 110 provisions and avoidance mechanisms like the knowledge development box. And at a minimum, we need an end to the banks writing off taxes on the basis of past losses. The budget does nothing to raise the living standards of those on low and moderate incomes, the overwhelming majority of the population. What will make a difference is affordable housing, free high-quality health care, affordable childcare and an end to the scourge of low pay affecting 1 in 4 workers. On housing, government policy has failed and will continue to fail. A policy relying on private landlords and developers cannot resolve the housing crisis. The Housing Department claims 25,000 social housing solutions were provided in 2017. In reality, only 7,000 new homes were to social housing stock, and of these only 400 were built by local authorities. Of the 12,358 claimed for this year, only 487, 4%, were new builds by local authorities. Subsidies to private landlords such as HAP and RAS will reach £1 billion by 2021 and was enhanced in this budget. Without adding any without adding to public housing stock or providing security of tenure. This is a landlord's budget. Tax relief has been increased from 80% to 100% for landlords. The alternative to this policy of incentivising developers, landlords and REITs has been outlined again, and not just by those of us on the left or in the opposition. On health, it is my belief that this government has quietly shelved the Sláinte Care proposals for real reform and a phased introduction of free health care at the point of delivery and access for all, with an emphasis on primary care and care in the community. Without the Sláinte Care reforms and funding to implement them, we will face a continuing and worsening crisis in our two-tier system. Irish childcare costs for lone parents are the highest in the EU, were the highest in the EU in 2015, and the second highest for couples. The average spent on childcare is 35% of family income, double the EU average, and there is no guarantee that the recent subsidies are being passed on through reduced fees. The Irish Congress of Trade Unions have called for public investment in early years care and education to be increased over the next 5 years to at least 1% of GDP. Today we spend 0.1%, that's 10% of what is required. The state should support the development of community co-ops in this area to provide more affordable care with better pay and conditions for workers in the sector. I can't go into the carbon tax, but it's an absolute scandal that after one day after the announcement of the absolute nightmare that our world is facing into, that we didn't even deal with an increase in carbon tax. Joined up thinking with long-term goals, with public investment in housing, healthcare and childcare would help transform lives and really challenge the problems of poverty and inequality in our society. It's obviously not going to come from this government, or indeed any government dominated by Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael. So go to the electorate, let the people decide.